The biggest topic of interest in the NBA right now is the Kevin Durant trade saga, more specifically his recent trade request from the Brooklyn Nets and what potential teams could trade for the perennial All-Star and former NBA MVP and two-time Finals MVP. There's also questions as to what these potential teams would have to give up in order to get a player of his caliber on their team. And there's been some big news that has recently dropped regarding Kevin Durant and his status with the Brooklyn Nets and where he could potentially be traded to in the near future. So to fully understand what is going on with the Kevin Durant trade saga, we first have to go back all the way to his initial trade request back on June 30th, which was originally reported by Adrian Wojnarowski saying Kevin Durant has requested a trade from the Brooklyn Nets. His initial preferred destinations after he requested a trade were the Phoenix Suns and the Miami Heat. However, there were multiple complications with these two teams as the Phoenix Suns were still in a situation where DeAndre Ayton was a free agent and they ended up matching his offer, which now limits them to what they can trade in a potential Kevin Durant package. And the Miami Heat are limited because Bam Adebayo cannot be traded to the Brooklyn Nets as long as Ben Simmons is still on the roster, as there is a rule prohibiting an NBA team from having two players that are on rookie max contract extensions that are traded for. Therefore, Ben Simmons and Bam Adebayo cannot both be on the Brooklyn Nets at the same time, which also limits what the Miami Heat would be able to give the Brooklyn Nets in a trade package. However, the questions are arising as would those teams, even with being able to include those players, be able to trade for Kevin Durant, as recently before Kevin Durant's trade request, the Utah Jazz traded Rudy Gobert to the Minnesota Timberwolves for a massive haul that included Patrick Beverley, Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt, Leandro Bolmaro, Walker Kessler, who was the Timberwolves first-round pick this season, and 4 future first-round picks, which is an incredible haul for a player who's an all-star but not necessarily a superstar player in this league. The Nets are seeking an impossible haul for Kevin Durant because obviously they're going to seek more than what the Utah Jazz received for Rudy Gobert, considering that Kevin Durant is a much better, far superior player to Rudy Gobert. We jump into the future a little bit, and the Celtics ended up making an offer for Kevin Durant that was eventually reported. They offered Jaylen Brown, Derrick White, and a draft pick for Kevin Durant. I was initially surprised by this, and a lot of NBA fans were surprised by this news, as the Celtics had just made the finals with Jaylen Brown on their roster, and he was arguably their best player in the 2022 NBA Finals, and the chemistry seemed to be good on that Boston Celtics roster and in that locker room with that organization. Why would they do that? Well, doesn't really matter because the Nets declined the offer anyway. They also wanted the Boston Celtics to include Defensive Player of the Year Marcus Smart in the trade. That is a large haul for Kevin Durant, but obviously Kevin Durant demands a big trade package, so it doesn't seem like there has been a ton of progression on the front of Boston Celtics trading for Kevin Durant, although we will get more to that later. Now we fast forward all the way to a couple days ago where there was a video posted on Kylie Jenner's Instagram showing Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Travis Scott backstage at Travis Scott's concert, popping champagne bottles, having a good time. And it was presumed that Kevin Durant and James Harden had a little beef going on, especially since James Harden's trade request from the Brooklyn Nets. It seemed like there might have been chemistry issues there, but this video started to kind of squash those rumors, squash those questions, and I think changed a lot of people's opinions on the relationship between the two of Harden and Kevin Durant. There was also a report saying that Kevin Durant gave the Nets an ultimatum that they had to get rid of their head coach and general manager, Steve Nash and Sean Marks, in order for Kevin Durant to stay. Obviously, the Brooklyn Nets aren't going for that, and they are putting their faith in their head coach and general manager. So the situation still with Kevin Durant and the Brooklyn Nets is a rocky one. And then here's the big piece of news that we've been waiting to get to this video for a different team that is potentially interested in trading for Kevin Durant and entering the Kevin Durant sweepstakes. The report is that, according to Ian Begley of SNY, there are high-ranking members of the 76ers organization that are interested in trading for Kevin Durant. This is huge news as the 76ers already have 2 superstar caliber players, and getting Kevin Durant on that roster would most likely make the 76ers championship favorites. However, the sources may be unreliable as they were cited as people familiar with the matter. That is a pretty bum source, if you ask me.
All right, Durant sees Boston as a desired landing spot. Per people familiar with the These are our sources now.
That doesn't really give me a lot of confidence that this is 100% real. But regardless, there are still other people coming out now saying that there is interest on both sides. Kevin Durant has now listed Boston and Philadelphia as his preferred landing spots for this offseason. To add fuel to the fire, there is now a video surfacing of Kevin Durant and James Harden working out together in Barcelona. Obviously, this just goes to show James Harden and Kevin Durant are still friends. Even though a lot of people thought they were beefing, including myself, they are apparently still good buddies, and it seems like they might want to play with each other again. Just to add to the drama, there is now a tweet from John Clark, who is a Philadelphia news source. The tweet states, "I'm told Kevin Durant is still close with James Harden and would like to play with him and Joel Embiid, as well as a few other teams confirming at Ian Begley. But I'm told the Sixers may not have enough for what Brooklyn is looking for in a trade. This will be intriguing to watch." So let's talk about what the Sixers might have to give up in a potential Kevin Durant trade package. The package would have to be centered around two key pieces, which would be Tyrese Maxey, impressive young player for the Philadelphia 76ers, and Tobias Harris, who has a large contract to match salary. It would also have to be around players like Matisse Thybulle and draft picks. There was a recent picture surfacing on Tobias Harris's Instagram and Twitter as he recently just got married, and it was a picture of him, Tyrese Maxey, Matisse Thybulle, and George Niang at his wedding, and people were posting it on Twitter and calling it the Kevin Durant trade package. Let's talk about the possibility of if Kevin Durant were to hypothetically be traded to the Philadelphia 76ers. First off, that creates a super team. Kevin Durant added to Joel Embiid and James Harden is a super team and would most likely then be the favorite to win the NBA Finals next season. Those three have combined to win 8 of the past 13 NBA scoring titles, and the team entirely looks pretty good. The starters for that team would be James Harden at point guard, De'Anthony Melton, Kevin Durant at small forward, PJ Tucker at the 4, and of course Joel Embiid at the center position. And then off the bench you'd have Shake Milton, either Isaiah Joe or Furkan Korkmaz, depending on where Doc Rivers would want to go, Danuel House, George Niang, and B-Ball Paul. Now this is assuming George Niang doesn't get traded. We don't know exactly who is going to get traded in the deal, but this is just assuming that the package is centered around Maxey, Harris, Thybulle, and picks. This would be who's left, and this would be what the team would look like. They would definitely lose depth, but ultimately that team is better now. That is amazing offensive firepower. They would probably be the best offense in the league with the three of Harden, Embiid, Kevin Durant. That's just absolute insane offensive production, especially since one of those guys is an elite playmaker, and then two of those guys are elite defensive players. It would also make the Philadelphia 76ers defense pretty elite as well. They've been one of the best defenses in the league for the past several seasons. When Joel Embiid is on the court, you add Kevin Durant to that, that makes them an insanely good defensive team, along with PJ Tucker and De'Anthony Melton, and you still have good defensive players surrounding the stars on that team. All the hype would be surrounding the 76ers if Kevin Durant were to be traded there. But let's look at some of the drawbacks for a potential Kevin Durant to the Sixers move, because there are definitely plenty of drawbacks when you look at this. First of all, you have to consider Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Joel Embiid all have a injury history, especially Kevin Durant and James Harden within the very recent memory, and Joel Embiid has been injured throughout his entire career. Kevin Durant has missed plenty of his fair share of games over the past couple seasons with the Brooklyn Nets, and James Harden has obviously still been dealing with that hamstring injury as well. Something else to consider is that the super team era has been dying over the past several seasons. Obviously, the most recent super team in memory was the Brooklyn Nets with Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and James Harden, and that obviously did not work out, partially due to injuries and just partially due to chemistry issues and a lack of depth. The super team era is fading in the NBA, and just attempting to do another super team, it's very risky, let's just say. Something else to consider is the age of Kevin Durant and James Harden. They're both getting up there, they're in their 30s, and this would then shorten the championship window and leaves the post-Embiid era pretty bleak. I mean, after Embiid ends up leaving, Kevin Durant and James Harden are probably going to be already off the team. They're going to be retired. If they're still in the league, they will not be near the same level of production that they're at now, most likely. And, you know, after this whole thing's over, the Sixers' future is looking terrible. They will probably be in a rebuilding state for several years after that and will have to completely rebuild their entire roster. And here's another thing to consider. If this Kevin Durant Philadelphia experiment does not work out, in the end, Kevin Durant could get frustrated. He could be frustrated with Doc Rivers coaching or frustrated with his teammates or whatever it may be, or he just gets sick of being here, we don't know. He could end up requesting a trade just like he did in Brooklyn and leave the Sixers with nothing. No draft picks, no depth, no young players to build around for the future. It's a big risk trading for Kevin Durant if you are the Philadelphia 76ers. Obviously, your goal would be to win a championship now, but if that doesn't work out, things could go downhill quickly if it doesn't work out. And of course, the chemistry on the team would take a hit as well. As right now, the chemistry on this Philadelphia 76ers team is at an all-time high in this Joel Embiid era, and making a trade like that would surely mess with the chemistry. Now, here's the big thing that's on the mind of Sixers fans. Trading Tyrese Maxey would destroy Sixers fans, because obviously you're getting Kevin Durant, one of the best players ever, but Tyrese Maxey is beloved in the city of Philadelphia. He is 21 years old. He's the hardest worker on the team right now, and one of the hardest workers I think I've ever seen in this city. He has incredible heart. He's just going to continue improving as he just continues to work hard, and he will never stop until he eventually reaches his peak. He will eventually fulfill his potential. He has absolutely no fear. He's been clutch in the past. He's able to step up in big moments. He's already won the Sixers a couple playoff games before, especially that first game in this past season's playoffs versus the Toronto Raptors. He dropped 38 points and looked absolutely unstoppable, flashing his potential in that game. He's been dubbed the franchise by Joel Embiid and the fans. Just to think about how valuable Tyrese Maxey is to the Sixers fan base and organization. And the future after Embiid, again, after Embiid, Tyrese Maxey is going to be the guy that's still there. He'll still be in his prime, and he'll probably be the guy the Sixers choose to build around, but if you trade him, you will not have that option. And then there's something else to consider, is that the Celtics could probably beat any Sixers trade offer anyway. If you offer Jaylen Brown, that's obviously the best trade piece that the Brooklyn Nets could probably get in a package for Kevin Durant, and then you add the Defensive Player of the Year, Marcus Smart, and potential draft picks. And I believe the Celtics have more draft picks than the Sixers, correct me if I'm wrong. But you could definitely build a better offer if you were the Boston Celtics. And you obviously would not want one of your main rivals in the Eastern Conference, the Philadelphia 76ers, to get Kevin Durant. So I'm thinking that the Sixers were to offer something, and then the Brooklyn Nets, all right, Boston, you have a chance to beat this offer. They could easily do that with a package of Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, and potential future draft picks. In the end, I ultimately don't think that this Kevin Durant to the Philadelphia 76ers trade will end up happening. The sources seem suspect at best. There's no direct source saying it's coming from this person. There's no one really saying it. None of the main people like Woj or Shams are coming out and reporting stuff like this either. And there's multiple other teams that could probably beat the Sixers trade package that have more draft picks and better pieces just in general to persuade the Brooklyn Nets to give them Kevin Durant in a trade. I ultimately do not think that the Sixers Kevin Durant trade will end up happening, but it is an interesting rumor to talk about. But we'll end up seeing what happens with this whole Kevin Durant trade saga, how it ends and where he ends up going. Or if he unlikely, maybe he'll stay with the Brooklyn Nets, who knows. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got for this video, guys. If you did enjoy, subscribe for more videos just like this. I do Philadelphia sports videos as well as other types of videos. And drop a like on this video if you did enjoy it to help push it out to other people. And leave your thoughts in the comments down below, and follow me over on Instagram and Twitter. And with that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this video. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.